Thank you very much. 안녕하세요. I was going to deliver my speech, but I realized that maybe I should present myself a bit. So I was indeed a minister in the French government, but I founded a company called Korelya Capital, which is a VC investment company that was specializing in tech investments, but more recently we diversified and decided to start investing in consumer business on a premium and sustainable, with a very strong premium and sustainable angle. So that's the reason why I am here today before you. So thank you very much for having me today to talk about sustainable fashion, and more importantly, whether the fashion industry is truly on the path to progress in terms of sustainability. From an investor perspective, this question isn't just philosophical, it's the one that touches on financial, ethical, and long-term economic growth concerns. When we look at the fashion industry today, it is clear that progress is happening. The key drivers pushing this forward can be grouped into four main areas. First one, shifts in consumer behavior. Consumers are increasingly aware of the impact of their purchases. The rise of resale platforms is an example of how consumer habits are now changing. Platforms like Depop, ThredUp, Vestiaire Collective, or Poshmark are not just niche anymore. They are influencing mainstream behavior by providing a second life for garments. As an investor, I think this shift is critical. It indicates a change in demand, and where demand goes, supply eventually follows. That was one of the reasons that convinced my fund, Korelya, to invest in Vestiaire Collective alongside a company like Kering, that you all know, in 2018. Second area of progress, engagement of strategic players. Brands like Patagonia and Veja have been flag bearers for sustainable fashion for years. However, the most exciting development is the rise of a new generation of brands, such as Asphalt, that are rethinking business models altogether. These brands aren't just designing for sustainability, they are innovating in how they engage with customers, produce their goods, and scale their businesses. Third area of progress, innovation in the value chain. Some of the most exciting progress is happening at the material level, whether it's biodegradable fabrics, innovative textile recycling technologies, or other advancements in circular fashion. What's driving this change is an influx of funding for startups focused on materials innovation and end-of-life solution. Investors are beginning to see returns on these innovations, which makes further investment in these areas even more appealing. Last, favorable regulatory environment. Governments are increasingly stepping in with legislation that incentivize or mandates sustainable practices. From extending producer responsibility laws in the European Union to waste reduction mandates, regulation is creating a more conducive environment for sustainability. These regulatory pressures, combined with shifts in public opinion and behaviors, encourages industrial players and platforms to adopt more virtuous practices and strong ESG commitments. Our portfolio company, Vestiaire Collective, has, for example, obtained the B Corp certification label and committed to ban fast fashion brands from its reselling platform. However, it's important to be realistic. The path to sustainable fashion is far from straightforward, and there are significant roadblocks. First roadblock, the supply chain fragmentation. Fashion supply chain is incredibly fragmented, and each stakeholder has different interests. Suppliers often operate on thin margins and cannot afford upfront costs that would be required for sustainable transitions. They need brands to step in and take a financial lead. But the brands, in turn, are cautious, and many will only fully commit if consumers demand it. Second roadblock, the consumer reluctance to pay a premium. The problem is consumers are not ready to pay significantly more for sustainable products, which creates a bottleneck. As investors, we need to recognize that this is not just a supply issue, It's also a demand-side problem. Third, the funding gap for innovation. To bring costs down and make sustainable products more accessible, we need more investment. There is a growing need for more funding, not just from private investors, but also from public funds to scale innovations that can fully and truly transform the industry. This issue is actually very similar to the one that aviation industry is faced with. Reducing the air travel carbon footprint can be significantly achieved by using SAF, sustainable aviation fuel, but SAF is much more expensive than traditional fuel, and the end customer is not willing to pay. So public investment would be required to achieve scale economies in SAF production in order to subsidize demand. So one of the major issues I also wanted to highlight is the say-do gap. Consumers express a desire for sustainability, but their purchasing behavior often does not align with those values. Bridging this gap requires a twofold approach. First, make sustainable fashion more desirable. People don't buy products just because they are sustainable. They buy them because they are desirable. Therefore, we need to elevate the value proposition of sustainable fashion. It's about creating a new narrative around what makes a product desirable. For the last 2 decades, desirability has been about fashion, fast fashion, constant newness, instant gratification. But we need to shift that focus toward product quality, craftsmanship, and even the history of a garment. Consumers should want products not just because they are new, but because they are made well and that they will last. Second, make sustainable choices easier. We need clearer standards, similar to what we see in the food industry with Nutri-Scores. Consumers should not have to guess which products are truly sustainable. Simple, transparent labeling could help drive informed choices. In addition, regulation could play a key role here by setting clearer standards and punishing unsustainable behavior. From an investor's perspective, we need to be pragmatic. Not all areas of fashion have the same impact on sustainability. As investors, we should focus on the areas within the value chain that present the biggest opportunities for change. Unfortunately, many of the solutions with the biggest potential impact are highly capital intensive and have long development times. This makes them less attractive to financial investors who seek quicker returns. To address this, we need a wider variety of funding sources, including corporates, governments, and philanthropy. Much like in the pharma and biotech sectors, exclusivity won't work. There needs to be co-investment. We're already seeing some examples of this. Take Inditex and H&M, for example. They are increasingly co-investing in sustainability initiatives. This kind of collaboration between competitors could be critical in scaling sustainability in fashion. How do we bring more funding sources to the table to encourage cooperation? One way is to align the interests of various stakeholders. An interesting example is our K-Brands Fund, where team compensation depends on achieving sustainability objectives with portfolio companies. Incentives matter, and aligning them with sustainability outcome is a very powerful tool. Lastly, sustainability and financial performance are not a trade-off. If you don't integrate sustainability into your business, you risk exposure to major issues like supply chain disruption, reputational damage, and regulatory fines. Furthermore, sustainability is a growth opportunity. For example, the resale market is projected to be worth $350 billion by 2027, a massive opportunity for both retailers and investors. So is the fashion industry on the path to progress in terms of sustainability? The answer is, of course, both yes and no. We are seeing promising shifts in consumer behavior, innovation, and regulation, but we're also confronting significant roadblocks, particularly around the fragmented supply chain and the say-do gap. The question for us as investors is how we can best position ourselves to accelerate the transition. The answer lies in being strategic about where we invest, aligning incentives, fostering collaboration, and recognizing that sustainability is not just an ethical imperative, but also a massive business opportunity. Thank you.